Sri Ramakrishna is the final word on God. Thus silently, in his own dignified way, Sri Ramakrishna was teaching his future disciple as to who he was. We think each God is different from the other. God is the same, visualized in different forms according to our tastes, tendencies, likes and dislikes and prejudices. God is formless. We give forms to Him. There's a story, or actually it happened, in Cochin, in the Cochin state. There was a sculptor who used to carve only elephants. He had a huge compound which is full of elephants in stone. Elephants in different postures, trumpeting, trying to run, lying down, various postures. One day the king of the country came to visit his farm, elephant farm. He walked around, he was really impressed. He asked the sculptor, the owner, "Oh, you must have taken great trouble in carving out these elephant forms in different aspects of life. How many postures, how many attitudes you have depicted through these forms? How do you do that?" The young man said, "When I find time, I go to the mountains, walk around and walk around and walk around, and find out a rock just suitable enough to be carved out. It should not be soft, then it will just break. It should not be hard, and my instruments will break. It should be just enough hard and enough soft for me to carve out an elephant out of it." Place. Build scaffoldings all around in bamboo, cover it with scaffolding. I watch and watch and watch, look and look and look at the rock from various angles. I climb up and then look at it for a long time, and go and lie flat on my tummy for a long time to find out what kind of elephant wants to come out of that rock. I don't have the form of the elephant in my mind, which I carve out. I know there's an elephant inside it, but in which form it is, I don't know. For days and days and days, I do that. And one day, I see an elephant, restless, eager to come out, asking me to bring him out. He is imprisoned inside that rock. Immediately I bring my tools, and from various angles I start working. Then the king said, "You must have had to go through hard trouble in carving it out." I don't carve it. I just remove all the unnecessary parts, and the elephant is already there. I carve out, I chisel out all the parts of the rock which are not the elephant. The elephant is already there, standing and posing in its own way. I don't know. When I remove the unnecessary parts, the elephant comes out. The rock is formless, but it contains a form. What kind of a form we don't know. God is formless, but that formless material, contains various forms, innumerable forms. You select whatever you want. Actually, the elephant that he carved out was the one he must have had unconsciously in his mind. Not consciously, unconsciously in his mind. It coordinated with the rock, the shape of the rock, the size of the rock, and then a miracle came. A wonderful elephant was brought out. Just all depending upon his capacity to do the work. So God is formless. But we give different forms and different names because we are fond of names. We give different names and we love one name of the same God more than any other name. That's all right. But some people don't like another form, they almost hate it. Thinking that the form that I have and I love is the only form of God. There's one great Swami in Thrissur, Swami Ishwarananda Maharaj, great scholar and a great Swami, monk. He told us a story. One day, a wayfarer, some gentleman walking along the village street found himself very tired and weak. He wanted rest. There's an open veranda in front of a house. In those days it used to be like that. He lay down on the veranda and went to sleep. At about 4 o'clock, 4:30, he woke up and was lying there when a girl of 15 or 16 from inside the house opened the front door. Hearing that, the man looked up and said, "Shiva, Shiva." The girl ran inside. In Tamil, the man has uttered the word that should not be uttered. He has said something unutterable, wrong. 15, 16 years old girl. So naturally, the people of the house thought that he had insulted her. They came with sticks and things like that and then began to beat him. "What did you say? What did you say?" He cried out, "Shiva, Shiva." That's it. So she would not spell the word Shiva. It's unutterable. Such was the hatred born out of narrow-mindedness. God is infinite. He is nameless, so any name suits him. He is formless, any form suits him, belongs to him. We who are narrow-minded fight over names and forms. In japa, this is what we do. What is japa? Repetition of the same word of God is called japa. Repetition of any word, say stone, 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 it's not a japa. Repetition of any name of God is japa. Now, it is said nama and nami are the same. The name and the owner of the name are the same. Suppose we had a meeting and we were talking of a lady, Sushila. Immediately somebody who has got the name of Sushila thinks, they are talking about me. Because she is one with her name. We don't even know her. We haven't even seen her. But immediately they identify themselves with the name. So Nama and Nami are the same. God and His name are the same. Because He has no name, all names are His. All forms are doorways to enter into the infinity. Once in 1977, during my first visit to Australia, a boys' high school invited me for a talk, to give a talk on Hinduism. The teacher, the particular teacher who invited me, was very broad-minded. It's a Christian school, very broad-minded. He had been inviting people from other religions also to give talks. On the way in the car, he asked me, "Your name is very long. How can we call you?" I said, "People call me Mataji. Mataji means mother." That's very good. My boys need a mother. But one thing I am warning you about, Mataji, my boys are so intelligent that they will ask cutting questions. I said, "I'll try to give answers according to my capacity." Last week, we had a Muslim scholar, and they pricked him so much that he burst out crying and then had to leave the room. I'll see what I can do. If I also cry, don't mind. We went there. And there were two ladies with me, myself and this gentleman. So he introduced me. She will speak on Hinduism and all that. And after the introduction, I got up. Now, during the introduction, he said, "We know a little of Hinduism from Encyclopedia Britannica. All that we know is Hinduism believes in reincarnation, that is rebirth. Then Hinduism believes that there's only one God, and that God is called Brahman. And two other things he said. I said, all right. These are all the things that we know. Then I said, and also, Mataji, you fill in the gaps. I got up and said, "Boys, my children, I heard that you are very intelligent boys and you know a bit of Hinduism. Now tell me what you know." The teacher asked me to fill in the gaps. I have to know where the gaps are. Without knowing what the gaps are, how can I fill them? So please stand up and tell me what you know. He gave me a general picture, but any other thing that you know, please stand up and tell me. Not one boy got up. I said, "Yes." He said that you are intelligent boys, clever boys. Get up. Stand up. No, not one. Then the teacher began to call, "Andrew, Thomas, Robert." Nobody got up. Just then that the teacher told me a little. Then I talked about Hinduism for half an hour and then question answers. "Do you believe in reincarnation?" He said that. I said, "Yes." "So do you think that perhaps you were born as a snake in your last birth or will be born as a snake in your next birth?" I said, after getting this habit, after getting this robe, never. I'll be born in a better form. Then one teacher from behind, the hall was full. One thing, when I entered the room, I was surprised. Huge young men with beard and all. They looked like 32 years old. They're all 18. Higher secondary boys. Huge men. Then one teacher from behind asked me, "Do you think that Christ was God?" Listen to the question. Do you believe that Christ was God? I said, what did you say? Christ was God. I said, Christ is God. Do you think Christ is dead? They crucified him and killed his body and released the God in him who can never die. When he was in his body, he was a man. They killed the body and released the God in him. He is God. How do you look upon him? I said, suppose there is a hill on the top of which is a mansion. There's a gate on the southern side, a gate on the eastern side, a gate on the northern side, a gate on the western side. Those people who are in the areas to the north will travel by train or car or by boat or by horse, whichever way is available for them. Their target is reaching that one mansion. They keep the southern gate as the goal. But when they reach there, they don't stop outside the gate. They go in through the gate into the mansion. The people on the eastern side will also do the same. By all means of conveyance, they travel. It may take a longer time or lesser time, doesn't matter. Their one aim is to reach the eastern gate. Keeping that in view, they travel. But they don't stop in front of the eastern gate. They pass in through it. So also on the northern side, so also on the western side. All don't stop in front of the gate. But gate has been always the aim. Each God is the gate. Keeping that God in view, we travel along the religious path. But on reaching there, we pass beyond them. Keeping Christ as my goal, I travel. But when I reach him, I don't stop there. I go beyond him and reach the same place that the other places people also have traveled towards. We all reach the same mansion. Actually, unconsciously, at the back of our mind, reaching the mansion is the goal. But we have to have one target. That target is the gate. But the gate is not the final goal. The final goal is God. No form, no name beyond all that. All these are in him. The gate is a part of the mansion. But gate is not everything. So Jesus is not everything. Krishna is not everything. He is only the gate. We need some target. We need some aim. The destination is beyond that. We will stop only after going beyond that form. So Jesus has got the same importance, the same place as all the other gods. That's how we view it. So any name can take us there. And if we go for a mantram from a proper guru who has got a parampara behind him, it will be more effective. We believe, we who belong to the Ramakrishna movement or Ramakrishna order, we believe that we belong to the Ramakrishna family. If we trace his parampara backwards, we reach Shankaracharya and like that, all the great rishis, and first comes Shiva. Shiva did not have a guru. Does anybody know about Shiva's parents or birthplace? Shiva is Swayambhu. We like marriage and having children and all, so we married him to Parvati. Actually, Shiva is consciousness, purity, auspiciousness. All that is great, condensed. condensed spirituality. No form. But we like forms, we gave him a form. We like a family, we gave him a family. And we gave him strange boys, poor things. One with 6 heads and one with long nose. No other god is like that. It is such strange children. And Shiva can absorb everything because Shiva has no form, no family. We like them. We like marriages. We like having children. Shiva is beyond that. Shiva is the first Guru. Swayambhu, self-born. From Shiva emerged or emanated all these mantrams through a parampara. When a diamond is placed in a dark room, it will exude beautiful brilliance. So also, when the mantram is kept inside the heart, or the name of God is kept inside the heart, spiritual power will come out. The more we keep it inside, the more you do japa, the more of the spirituality from inside the naam will come out. When Swami Vivekananda went to England, Sister Nivedita and Margaret Noble was one of the audience in a friend's house. And she comments on her impression that Swamiji produced in her. She says, on that, he had a forehead which had the calmness of a Sistine child, that is Christian boy, Christian child, whom Raphael, one of the greatest sculptors of Europe, had carved with the little mother. The calmness, the tremendous calmness, the immense quietude, Shanti, that Raphael had to try to depict on the forehead of little Jesus, sitting cozily inside the arms, within the arms of his mother. That I saw on the brow, on the forehead of Swamiji. And then she comments, it's the result of long years of meditation, long years of God concentration on God. So the more we do the japa inside the heart, the more the peace inside it, Goddess peace, will come out and fill our heart, not only heart, with our whole being. Life will be more interesting because we will be looking at life like a witness. Sakshi nitya pratyek atma shivoham. Shankaracharya sings for us. And the witness, always watching things, not participating in them. You watch a procession. You don't become a part of that. You keep yourself safe and sound within your home, but you watch it and you enjoy. You feel happy. Look at the whole panorama of this world as a witness, without emotionally participating in it, and life will be more interesting. That we can do only when we have peace inside. When we have got many problems and the heart is in a turmoil, we can't look at the world as a witness. This constant japa, or japa as much as possible, will create peace in the heart. All right, the world is like that. Even if it happens to me, all right, the world is like that. Life is like this. Swami Vivekananda says, when you stand on the peak of a hill, remember the next step is downwards. If you are on the peak, next step is downwards. Means you are on the heights of bliss. Next step is towards turmoil and trouble. As usual, every year in December, there's a retreat in the Trichy Center. It started in the early 50s. Then Swami Isharananda, I told you the name before. He was very young, and he used to sit for the question answer hour after Arati. The women used to stay with us on this side. Sharada Math is on this side of the road, and Ramakrishna Math is on that side of the road in Thrissur. So we used to put up the ladies in our place. About 100 ladies used to come for 5 days, and 150, 200 men on the other side. All of them used to have the meeting in the men's mutt. And we used to go, because Sharada Math hadn't been started. We were members of the Ramakrishna Belur Math. And one day, during question answer hour, one man said, Swamiji, very, very sad. Swami asked, what's that? What has happened? The world has gone to the dogs. The world has gone to the bottommost depths of degradation. Remember the word. The world has reached the bottommost steps of degradation. Very desperate situation. Swami's face is a very good-looking face, bloomed. A wonderful smile came on his lips. And he said, what? Bottommost depths? Next step is upwards. Do you understand? Bottommost depth means next step is upwards. So we are going upwards next time. That's called being a witness. Every step we think that you will give way to the next step. Even if it's downwards, not far. That's what they say, not far. A little more and then I go upwards. Hope. Keep hope. If you practice japa, there's always this hope. After this dip, one dip in the wave is preceded by a rise and followed by a rise. So when we are going downwards, no, beautiful time is coming, beautiful time is coming. Wait for that, hopefully. Japa will give you the strength. And remember one thing more. Nama is more powerful than naming. The name is more powerful than the owner of the name. It's a story. Sri Ramchandra was performing a huge yajna. Sri Ramchandra's time, all the great rishis, saints had come. Vyasa, Valmiki, Vasishtha, Vishwamitra, everybody. Sri Ramchandra's yajna, a huge area, had been filled with pandals, and on a large scale, going through a month or so, the yajna was going on. One evening, a local Raja, young man of a small kingdom nearby, was coming back after hunting. He was in the forest hunting and he was coming back. There was a small group of soldiers with him. When he reached in front of the Yajnashala, he thought, big rishis, big people are all inside. I should not go by on horseback. So he got down and walked. And he reached the huge gate, the pandal, of the pandal. Big, great, saintly people are here. I should not go without paying my homage to them. Saying that, keeping his head on the pole of the gate, he said, oh, what am I to do? All great sages are there. There's no time to tell the names of everyone. So he said, Vasishtha Maharshe, representing all of them, my pranams. And he went away. Narada heard that. Immediately he went inside and told Vishwamitra, sit there thinking that you are great. Little small people are insulting you. Do you understand that? What? Yes. Small people are insulting you and you think that you are great. You are pulled down from your level. What happened? That little Raja, on his way, he paid homage only to Vasishtha, not you. Now you know, Vasishtha and Vishwamitra were like that in the story. Oh, did he insult me like that? I'll teach him a lesson. Immediately he went to Sri Ramachandra and said, I need your help. Whatever help you need, I'll do it for you. By tomorrow evening, before sunset, that little king's head should be placed at my feet. He insulted me. All right. Sri Ramachandra didn't ask why it was. He said, I'll do it. Then Narada straight away went to that king. The poor king, young man, after a hard day's work, was resting. He hadn't even drunk a glass of water. So that tired he was. Narada went to him and said, enjoy. One day more, then that head will not be on this body. What happened? You did a very wrong thing. What? I'm an innocent man. I don't do any wrong to anybody. You insulted one of the greatest rishis in the world. What? I paid homage to them. To whom? So many great rishis are there. Whom can I call? So representing all of them, I call the name of Vasishtha. Why didn't you call the name of Vishwamitra? I couldn't call the name of everyone. Now Vishwamitra is angry. And he has taken a promise from Sri Ramachandra that your head will be placed at Vishwamitra's feet before sunset tomorrow. Ayyo, what am I to do? Please help me. What? What are you saying? Against a person like Sri Ramachandra, what power is there on this earth or in the universe, in creation, which can stand the anger of Sri Ramachandra? He has given his promise. He will do it. Oh no, there should be some way out. And you know everything. Please help me. Please help me. And he pretended to be thinking, someone may help you. Who is that? Hanuman. Try Hanuman. Hanuman may be able to help you. Where is he? Nobody knows. No one knows where Hanuman is. So what am I to do? Narada said, somebody may help you. Who is that? Anjana. Hanuman's mother. Hanuman had given a promise to Anjana, wherever you think of me, I'll come. Just when you need me. Where is Anjana? About 300 kilometers away, or more than that, far away. Early in the morning, she will go with her friends for a bath in the river. Hide behind a tree and find out who is Anjana. Anjana is a very beautiful lady. Now we say that Hanuman, Anjana, they were all monkeys. But actually, I read in one book that they were not Vanara, they were Vanamara. Some people out of jealousy for South Indians call them Vanara. Vanamara means forest people. Because in some Ramayana book, there is mentioned that in Sugriva's, of course, Tulsidas Ramayana gives elaborate description. In Sugriva's cave, there are cushions. The monkeys have cushions and sofas and things like that. In Tulsidas Ramayana, when Sugriva was coming to see Sri Ramchandra, elephants and chariots and horses, all this were with him. So it shows that they were not Vanaras, they were Vananaras. And Anjana was one of the most beautiful women in the world. You can pick her out from the crowd of women very easily. So find out who she is, and then when she comes back after her bath, go and catch her hold of her feet. Ask for help. The poor young Raja jumped onto the horseback and rode the whole night to reach the place. And there, early in the morning, he heard the voices of women. So he hid behind a tree and peeped out and identified Anjana, an elderly woman, very good-looking, dignified lady. So he waited. When they came back, he went forward and fell flat on his tummy in front of her and caught hold of her feet. You, who is that? I'm a poor woman, helpless. You look like a king. Why do you hold my feet? No. Tell me you will help me and I will get up. Whatever help, I can't help anybody in the world with anything at all. I don't have anything and nobody. But say you will, I will get up. You please ask your son to help me. That's all. All right. Just close the eyes, thought of him, and Hanuman came. What can I do for you? Mother, I don't need anything. This young man wants some help. Please do that for him. And she went away. The Hanuman asked him about the whole story. The poor young man told him the whole story. Oh, that's a big problem. To stand against Sri Ramchandra. Sri Ramchandra has given a promise. You want me to make him break it? Oh, that's almost next to impossible. He thought for some time. All right. He took him to a lonely place where there were no trees. He said, sit there on the ground like this. On the ground. Don't move till I ask you to move. Don't make any sound. Sit there quietly. And he began to increase the length of his tail and built a huge fort around him. He reached the sky. Sit inside. In the morning, Sri Ramchandra got up and went to the kingdom, the palace of the king. The people in the palace said, we don't know, because they couldn't see Narada. They didn't hear the conversation between Narada and the king. They didn't know what happened. The king came, was resting here. Suddenly he got up on horseback and rode off. He ran after him for some time, could not catch up with him. We don't know where he went. He disappeared. So they wandered and at last came to this place. Where to go now and seek him out? Yes, then Sri Ramchandra saw Narada standing behind. Oh Narada, you are here. You know everything. Because you roam around the whole world. Where is that king? I need your help. He's inside that. Oh, that's all. He took his arrow and shot at the fort. But strange to say, that never happened in Sri Ramchandra's life. The arrow went near the fort, without touching it, came back. The arrow sent by Sri Ramchandra, without touching the target, that aim, coming back helplessly, has never happened. He began to use more and more powerful arrows. No, nothing could touch that tail. Something was pushing it back. What is more powerful than me? Sri Ramchandra could not understand. Narada, what's happening? Oh Lord, stop sending arrows and listen. So Sri Ramchandra stopped fighting and listened. All stood there silently. Then they heard Ram, Ram, Ram. This japa going on. Who is doing that? Hanuman was sitting there and doing japa. Oh Lord, fortunately or unfortunately, your name is more powerful than you. So when the name is uttered, he has to come. Shri Krishna says, I am lost, I am fearful to give bhakti to people. I am ready to give yoga, I am ready to give tyaga, I am ready to give any power. But to give bhakti is difficult. Because where the bhakta calls, I have to go. I will be a slave. The japa is the rope which pulls him. Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, there is a great treasure at the bottom of the ocean. And a long, miles and miles and miles and miles long chain is one end tied to the box and one in our hands. Link by link, if we go, one day we can reach the treasure. Japa is one link. One utterance of the name of God is one link. The more japa you do, the more closer you come to the treasure. That's God. Peace. The three things that keep peace away. Possession, power. Three P's keep us away from the fourth P. What are they? Possession, power. People in high positions, they are filled with pride. The fifth P. They are filled with pride. Those who have got a lot of possessions, they are also arrogant, proud. And those who are powerful, they also are proud. And so the peace keeps itself away from them. If we want to have peace, japa, just a two-letter word, a simple word, has got such power that it can pull the Lord towards us. You can't keep away. It's called a japa sadhana. Thank you.